Okay, for tonight's Sacred Strengths video, we are going to break protocol. Um, so the next strength we have to cover here is the input strength. And in studying this, I don't know input real well, to be honest. I mean, I know it, but I don't run across it a lot. So I wanted to review it a bit to make sure I'm giving you some valuable content here. And as I was watching the training video that we had in our course to become certified from our mentor Eddie Villa, who you can see his cheeky grin right up there behind me and that little sign. Eddie combined actually the next three strengths together. And it just so happens that they fall in alphabetical order and they're all kind of related and they're all strategic thinking strengths. So, in reviewing how he did this, I think it really makes good sense. I really appreciate what he did here. He's a very bright guy. And I think I'm going to follow suit with this. So, I'm going to present to you tonight. We're going to try this, and I'm going to present to you tonight three strengths in one video. And so we're going to talk about input, we're going to talk about learner, and we're going to talk about intellection because they are all so similar that it makes sense to kind of talk about them together. And the differences, you'll understand how a person can why they may be higher in one of these areas than the other, but yet they're all cut from the same cloth, so to speak. So that's what we're going to do. Let's talk about, we're going to start with input, and we're going to be working with learner and intellection all at the same time. So as I mentioned, these are all three under the strategic thinking domain. And just to tell you where these strengths fall for me and for Kim, I always like to share where these are in our divine natural abilities. So for me, input is, see, I even have to look at these up because this one's kind of in my no man's land. It's kind of that flyover country. So input for me happens to be number 18, and for Kim it happens to be number 22. So not in our top, not in our bottom, really that kind of blah area where it doesn't really work for us, but it's not really working against us either. Not the same situation for learner. For learner, this is actually my number 16 strength, so it is kind of in the middle for me again. But this is actually Kim's number one strength. This is her head strength, and that is a very big deal. So I want to make sure I don't gloss over this in combining the three videos. I think combining the three strengths in this video, I think I can actually enhance all three strengths by doing that. And so that's my purpose here. That's what I'm going to try to do. And then the last one, intellection, I actually have that one high in mind. That one's my number 6, which is one of my, one of the strengths that surrounds my heart strength or my anchor strength. And for Kim, that one happens to be number 19. So we each have one of these strengths, or learner and intellection. We each have, one of us has one of those high. And for all the other, we both, for input, it's kind of no man's land. And for learner, that's my no man's land, and for intellection, that's Kim's no man's land. But you're going to see how these things all kind of, again, they're cut from the same cloth. So it's neat to see how these are related, how they're similar and how they're different. All right, so let's start talking about input a little bit. Input is, if I were to give you a very simple, basic definition of what input is. People with high input are collectors. They love collecting things. They love to collect data. They love to collect, I don't know, they love to collect rocks on the beach, or they love to collect maybe stamps or coins or people even. It doesn't matter. They love to collect. They love to collect things. And I think this reminds me of my daughter, Sarah, who actually has this strength as her number 9 strength. And ever since she was tiny, 3 years old, she always loved to collect things. She would, if we went to the beach, she would be collecting shells, and she collected little animal figures and all kinds of things. She was always been a collector. And so I'm not at all surprised that she has input very high. So that's a very simple kind of basic concept of what to look at for input. But that doesn't really describe to you this how that's a strategic thinking strength simply by collecting things, does it? So as these high input people are collecting data, what they're doing is these are all resources for them to use to be able to process in a way that helps other people, that helps others that they're working with, or to help the masses, or to solve a big problem, or to help others. That's one of the cool things about all three of these strengths. And odds are definitely you're going to have one higher than the other two, right? But what's really fascinating is that what these strengths do, these are all three of them are very much about empowerment. They're about self-empowerment. So these strengths here, as you're looking at these, they all end up with kind of the same goal at the end, but it's a different process they follow to get there. So let's talk about input again. So input are these collectors. They're collecting all this data because they want to help whoever it is out there in the world with whatever they need help with. And if you have high input, regardless of what your primary domain is, maybe you're not primary strategic thinker. Maybe you're high executor. Maybe you're high relationship builder. Maybe you're high influencer. So if these are your domains, if you're high influencer and you have input, that means you're going to collect all this data and put it to use in helping others move forward. If you are an executor, you're going to collect all this data and use it to make sure things are done the right way. And if you are a relationship builder, then you're going to use all this information to better connect with others, to connect with the right people. Okay, so it doesn't matter what your primary domain is. That is how these work, because these are, again, all three of these strengths are really about personal empowerment and making yourself more effective. Okay, so let's talk about some of the differences here. As I said, input is about using that information, taking in all these resources, so you're able to apply it to others and help others see, a better way of doing whatever it is they need to do. How does that different from learner? Learner ends up with the same goal, but it's a different process. So with learner, what we do is the person is using this data to first empower themselves. It's not going out to other people. That comes secondary. It'll get there. But first and foremost, they're trying to solve a problem or answer a question for themselves. That is what a high learner does. And I can tell you that is exactly who Kim is. She asks lots and lots of questions. And she's constantly learning, constantly asking questions. And I can see how she applies it, because she's trying to solve something or learn something that she doesn't already know. It's for her personal gratification first, and then she can apply it to others. And so that's the way the learner works. It's kind of a different process, has maybe a little bit different step in there. Now, let's talk about intellection. Intellection is, again, that one's my number 6, so I have this one high. And intellection is about going deep. So intellection is about taking this information and not necessarily taking it outward, like input ends up taking it outward to others, and learner gets to that point after going kind of through themselves first. Intellection is about, we don't know enough about this yet. We have to go deeper. We have to study more. And so you see people with high intellection who they hear something they haven't heard before, and they just kind of get quiet and they don't say anything for a few minutes. And you can just you can almost see the gears turning inside their head, because they're processing and they're taking it to a much deeper level than what others without high intellection would do. And so that's the fascinating thing about people with high intellection, is there is no bottom to get to. They can keep going. There's always something that can be investigated further, can be thought more deeply, can be considered, more holistically, or whatever that is. It's a much deeper process. It goes and it goes and it goes, and it does not stop. So that is primarily the three differences on how, or the differences between these particular strengths: input, learner, and intellection. Now, something else I wanted to share with you about intellection, and this is from my own, I know this personally. Intellection people, because they go so deep with something, trying to understand it to its fullest, to its core, to every single atom that makes up whatever topic it is they're doing. They need time to process it. They cannot process quickly. It's not about quick. It's about thorough. It's about depth. So there are things that I am still processing, probably, that I've been processing for years. Some things that people have gone through or come to a conclusion of, and they figure, hey, that's good. I understand this. I can move on knowing what I know. People with high intellection don't really get to that point. There's always something deeper to get to. So that is something to understand. If you're working with someone with high intellection, or you are a person with high intellection, give yourself that time. You need that. You need that time. Don't encourage or push people with high intellection to make quick decisions or to react quickly. It doesn't work that way. So it has to go through a process of their own timing. That is very important for a person with high intellection. All right. Where can all three of these strengths go sinister? This is the big thing with with all three of these strengths, and this is pretty common with all of the strengths that are under the strategic thinking domain. The important thing is that the knowledge that is gathered gets applied. It needs to get applied to the public so that other people can benefit from this. But the problem with all three of these strengths, if you have any one of these strengths high, the safe place for you to stay is in your mind. Okay, that's the safest place for you to be. It gets a little risky when you start letting people see what's going on inside your mind. That's when it can be a little bit scary for a person with these high strategic thinking strengths, because nobody wants to feel judged. Nobody wants to feel that their process is wrong, or their process is skewed, or not producing what it should produce. So it's very easy to kind of shut off the rest of the world and stay in that mindset of, here's my safe space. I'm going to stay right here, especially if there has been some criticism or some trauma that encourages a person to stay in there, to stay up here. So that is one of the things that can go sinister. It is important to prevent that from happening by communicating your process. Okay, I think that's the best way to keep from being too stuck in your own head. You have to communicate your process. And each of these strengths, people can make assumptions about because it's all in your head. They don't really know what's going on in your head. They're going to make assumptions about you. I know I've made assumptions about Kim, and she's probably made assumptions about me. And we've made assumptions about our daughter with a high input, So this all happens. Kim being high learner and asking as many questions as she does. There's times where I interpreted that as, she doesn't trust me if she's asking me all the questions, or she doesn't agree with me, or she's not respecting my process. It's not the case at all. That's my issue. That's my baggage. Okay, so I need to separate myself from that, and it's important. So if you have high learner, for example, one of the things to communicate is, just kind of what I told you about learner is say, listen, this is my process. I have to ask these questions so I can figure this out in my own mind so that then I can help others with it. Okay, so if you're able to articulate that, you're going to put people at ease a lot more, and they're going to be, oh, okay, you're not disrespecting me, you're not doubting me, you're not disagreeing with me. Now I understand better where you're coming from. My brain doesn't work that way, but I appreciate the fact that you explained things that way. The same thing with input. You're constantly gathering data, and somebody again can misconstrue that, all that gathering of information, as you're being just being on a one-track mind, or not considering the knowledge that another person might have, maybe that you might have. You got somebody that's collecting all this information and they're not listening to you. You might interpret that again as a source of disrespect. Intellection, same thing. You're all in your own head. You're so deep in your own head that you're going to need to be able to communicate to them, hey, I have high intellection. and what that means is there's no bottom to where I stop searching this, and it's just my process, and I need time for that to happen. Time is the most critical thing I need, because it takes a long time to go down through all the different layers I need to go through in coming up with something that's going to be helpful for you down the road. Okay, so these are the kinds of things that you should try to get comfortable communicating. Communication is the best, by far, key in helping people understand the strength and to keep you from being stuck here. It still allows you to do your process. It's just letting everybody else know what your process is. And so that's the huge benefit here. I'm not at all suggesting that you stop doing your process, or that you're doing something you shouldn't be doing, or you need to tone it down. We don't do that in the strengths, right? We don't tone down strengths. We ramp up strengths. So I want you to do your process. Do it to your best ability, because that is what's going to be put out there. But with these three strengths, you're going to empower yourself and help others to be able to, again, to be inspiring, to be more productive, to connect better, and to think better. All that comes from these three strengths being allowed to work the way they're intended to work. So keep the communication up. Explain people what your process is. Trust them a little bit with that, because there's nothing wrong with your process. Be very clear about it. Be very bold about it. You don't need to apologize for that. That's your process, and it works. So embrace it. Thank you very much. I hope this video worked well and you got something out of all three of these strengths. Again, we've covered input, we've covered learner, and we've covered intellection. All three strategic thinking strengths. They all happen to be alphabetically right in the right order for me to do this. And I think it works pretty well. Thank you very much. Let me know if you have any questions. And until I see you next time, remember, inspiration starts here.